That's why we want to spend some time with Michael Hardaway, because the environment is not getting easier on Capitol Hill. It's going to get harder as we head for the midterm elections. He's the founder of Hardaway Wire, briefs political intelligence to CEOs, former communications director for the House Democratic Caucus, and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Michael, it's great to have you back. What's the first order of business? Lawmakers obviously just got back into town yesterday. They need to get this budget done before we talk about the rest, or is it on to Usika?
Well, I come bearing good news and I come bearing bad news.
You always do.
The good news is there is some bipartisan effort surrounding the China competition bill. You can expect that. That's coming to the floor this week for the House. You can expect that to move and eventually become law. That is the good news. Mm-hmm. The other piece of good news here is that looking a little further down the road, there won't be a government shutdown. Mm-hmm. We're essentially telling our CEOs that there likely will be a CR that leads into a larger omnibus budget, but there will not be a shutdown.
Okay,
now,
so let's...
Bad news.
Okay, God, you're bringing me the... Okay, now let's go straight through it. Rip the Band-Aid.
The bad news is there is no Build Back Better, as we discussed multiple times last year.
We did.
There, unfortunately, is 0% chance that happens, and I'll tell you why. The Senate and the House are two vastly different places. Think of this like the financial services industry. The House is like the investment bankers. The Senate is like the private equity guys, right? And so whatever the Senate comes up with, the House will not be satisfied. They'll want significantly more involved. If the House comes up with something, the Senate will consider it to be entirely too much. And so for that particular reason, you can't square that circle, and there will be no Build Back Better. And they're really, for the most part, for the balance of the year, you won't see much action.
So it was the end of last year. I'm pretty sure December, Michael Hardaway on this broadcast said, if Build Back Better does not pass this month, it will not pass this year. And it's not going to pass this month. So here we are, fast forward, 2 months here, Michael, and people keep talking about chunks. The White House doesn't like us to talk about legislation as a bunch of chunks. I guess it generates an image. But you know what I'm saying. You slice this thing up, find a couple of winners, attach it to another piece of legislation, try to get it passed and call it a win. Does that happen?
If it were possible for something to pass the Senate and become law, then it could happen. But that's not the way things work. Mm-hmm. I think there's bipartisan consensus around things like negotiating drug prices, for instance. 83% of Americans support that. So I think there are facets that have bipartisan support, but none of these things will happen, and I'll tell you why. In the Senate, you'll find consensus around that, but what you'll find in the House is that nothing will pass that doesn't include significant environmental sort of money and policies that address climate change and a number of other items, and of course, that will never pass the Senate. Mm-hmm. And so what you have is a House of Representatives that wants to address climate change. If that is not included in whatever legislation comes together, it will not pass the House. And of course, the Senate would never pass something that specifically addresses climate change at this particular moment.
Talk to me about the leadership. That was obviously your world, Michael, and you're flying pretty close to the sun on this one because you were working for Hakeem Jeffries, and there's a big conversation going on right now among Democrats to prepare for the post-Pelosi era, as the Washington Post put it. That could be in a minority role as opposed to holding the gavel next year, but is Hakeem Jeffries going to be the next leader in the House for Democrats?
It looks like it. The reality is that, Hakeem is not only the party's best messenger, but in terms of getting things done, there are very few members of Congress that can match his record. He's worked in a bipartisan way to pass a number of bills, from criminal justice reform to trade secrets to a number of sort of trademark-related pieces of legislation. And I think for that particular reason, he's got to be your quarterback that takes the party into sort of this next era.
Yeah, heck of a time to take over. Will he be holding the gavel, or will he be minority leader, working the opposition against say, Speaker McCarthy?
He'll be the latter, which is a much more fun job.
It's an easier job, that's for sure.
Democrats will get crushed in the midterms. They'll get absolutely crushed. And Hakeem will come in and he'll essentially be sort of the bomb thrower that, from a messaging perspective, really drives the party's message, while also trying to find ways to work with McCarthy and Republican leadership where he can.
I'll tell you what.